Hello, my name is Julie Meyerowitz with Hear My Words RDI, and I am here with Amy Cooperman from New You Therapy, excuse me. And I had met, you know what, I actually misspoke in a previous interview with Ryan McGuire, which I could link after this. And I said that he was the last person that I met in the old world. But Amy, I actually think that you are the very last person that I met in the old world before COVID at our friend's party, at our friend's prom party. And we hit it off immediately. And we just had a great time talking about our shared interest and professional experience in autism. And since then, you've shared a story with me that we are here to share. So Amy, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourselves and about New You Therapy?
Right. Okay, so I've been a therapist for 23 years.
Mm-hmm.
I started out with public schools, like an itinerant therapist.
Uh-huh.
And then I worked in geriatrics, and then I really wanted to work in autism.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a temporary placement and at a school with very severe autism.
Right.
And I really saw that I had I don't know, an intuition about working with these kids.
Right.
So from there, I started to develop cooking and craft programs. I experimented with a lot of things. We used hammers and nails, and the staff was sort of horrified that I was using these things. But I never had an accident or any problem.
Thank God, yeah. Just
So,
real quick, Amy, I'm sorry. Can you say real quick, what sort of a therapist are you?
Occupational therapist.
Right. Okay. We didn't specify that. Go ahead. Yeah.
Right. I am certified in sensory integration. So that's, one of my real specialty areas.
You know what? I want to do a future interview on that also. I'm very interested in that. Yeah.
And I have a background in art before I became a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot of art through my life and different kinds of art therapy. So that has been a running theme throughout all my work as a therapist. The art has always been a piece in there.
Right.
So I was at the school, and then this school transitioned into a larger school. And then we really blossomed with our programs. And we had a sensory integration. We had a room, a beautiful gym, and I had a real kitchen. And it was amazing. It was an amazing program. So that was for a few years. And then the school, they brought in an ABA therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And we had ABA therapists before, but they were sort of like low-key part of the team. It wasn't like that they stood out that much. So when this therapist came in, he was very clear that he did not respect OT, sensory, any of the things we were doing. He showed us many research studies kind of debunking all of the work we were doing. And it was pretty insulting, yeah. But we felt, look, we were doing a good job there. So basically I would say the tension really kind of circled around this one student whose parents were very involved. The boy was 17. Mm-hmm. And I had him in my craft group. And I noticed when he worked, I saw that I think this kid has some artistic talent. I think there's something, he is seeing something there, and he's able to paint or sew or draw. I could see it. Meanwhile, the ABA therapist was going into the classroom and counting the headbangs that this kid was doing, with blood, the whole thing. And so he would come with his clipboard, oh, this boy had 57 headbangs today. And then I would say, well, my job is to see that this is not happening. The headbanging should not be happening, because we need to figure out why he's doing that and prevent the headbanging. Mm-hmm. So it became a kind of like an ideological war almost with this, to the point that I left the school.
Mm-hmm.
I felt I could not support what they were doing with this family. I felt it was wrong. But before I left, I told the parents, you know, I see some talent in your son, and I would like to work with him with art, just
Mm-hmm.
privately, just me and him.
Yeah.
So they took me up on it, and this boy flourished. The boy who was banging his head 52 times became an artist, and he has he has a website. He
Wow.
has a greeting card business,
Oh, wonderful.
and he's amazing. He's amazing. So, you know, I don't want to say it validated like the things I was seeing, but it kind of did, because like the way that I look at these kids and the way that the ABA therapist was looking at these kids was so different, and I just feel like my work brought him into being a functional person.
Okay.
And that is what I think, that's the goal here.
Yeah.
So all the work we did with him, we did a lot of sensory work, a lot of communication, lots and lots and lots of work. And it transferred over. I worked in his home, then I worked at his father's office, then I worked in his group home. I have followed him over the years.
Yeah. How old is he now?
He's 23.
Okay.
He's a marvelous, marvelous boy. I have some samples of his artwork.
Love to see it. I'd love to see his artwork. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then maybe if we want to speak to his family and him to get permission, if maybe we could share that along when we share your contact information, if they're open to sharing.
Oh yeah, well he's got his business online. It's public.
But is his history online also?
No.
So we
Probably
would
not
get that
banging,
permission
yeah.
first. Yeah.
Right.
This is so cool.
So this was
Yeah.
it's called Cheer Up. I get well card.
I love that.
We did a lot of still life.
Very nice.
I was very interested in how he saw things. What does he see?
Right.
And
His perspective. It's about his perspective.
his
right?
perspective. Very interesting the way he saw inside of a vase. Like if it was a solid vase, he would still draw the stems.
That's interesting. Because he was aware of them.
Oh my gosh, it's like they say in autism, they're so hyper aware of everything, they don't know where to start.
Right.
But with drawing, we were able to really channel all those perceptions. His coloring is beautiful. He picked out his own colors, and every time he'd say, you know, he wasn't sure what color. I'm like, Brian, whoops. You pick the color, and it was always the one that I would have chosen to give it the pop of color, you know.
He had an artistic sense.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Still life, the way that he was seeing things. So this is an amazing experience. I think for all of us that we saw this boy's soul.
That's
and you know, it's not always that you get a glimpse of that, but when you do art and you do lots of different things with these kids, you see parts of them, and there's many deep layers to these individuals that we need to access it. We really need to. And
maybe, you know, maybe through this one student, or maybe you could also bring in examples of other students. Maybe we could track like what his reaction was to the. I'm hearing 3 different phases in the education and the therapy that he was getting. Like the before the ABA came in, the during the time that was mostly under ABA, and then the after. So can you first tell us, just to clarify, what sort of modalities were being used before the ABA came into this school? Or approaches, or maybe like the philosophy of how the children were being approached.
It was,
or how would you describe that environment, perhaps?
I think they were taking data, but it was more just kind of like charting, like this classroom staff would be charting different things. They would offer them a lot of activities. They were very structured. They had schedules, all of that. But I
Visual
think the
schedules.
starting was like a secondary thing of like, this is what happened, basically. The sensory piece was very big with him. Like, I really took that on myself to study him. Like, when he came in the building, because they would come, the staff would have meetings and they'd say, well, he has been throwing his shoes. As soon as he comes in the building, he throws his shoes.
Okay.
So I would stand and watch him when he came in the building.
What's happening in that moment?
And I would see, what does he see? And it could be that he saw that long hallway and didn't really know where his locker was. What is he doing today?
Right.
And maybe was having anxiety about that. So we tried to really study what was causing those behaviors, and they got better.
So then with that, so with that insight, then you would apply a change in some way, I'm assuming, right?
Yes.
So why don't we focus then even more narrow on the shoes? So like, for example, with the shoes, the throwing the shoes. So what did you then implement after like studying trying to get inside with his experience of that moment when he was doing something that people weren't liking? Like what realizations did you get and what change did you make in response to those realizations?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would backtrack even before he went in the school. I'd say to his father who was driving him, I'd say, well, how was he in the car?
Right.
Oh, he was a little bit agitated.
Yeah.
Something. I'm like, okay, so I use a certain kind of drumming program, auditory drumming program that has helped a lot of people with autism to like calm them down. So we started to use that as a CD in the car.
Cool.
Before he came into school. So that kind of got his nervous system calmer.
Mm-hmm.
Then we tried also, before he came in the building, I tried spraying some aromatherapy, using a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And then
more
as
sensory.
he would,
yeah.
Yep. And as he would turn the corner, there he had his schedule. Someone handed him his schedule.
So then he knew what he was expecting. So it wasn't
he was oriented.
overwhelm. Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't this anxiety of like, there's a hallway, there's a locker, there's a day ahead of me, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right. He felt more in control.
He became oriented, and that was very, very helpful.
Yeah.
There were other times where they said, oh, he totally trashed the cafeteria today.
Oh.
So why is he trashing the cafeteria?
Yeah.
It turns out he hates the smells of the cafeteria. And
I can relate to that. I remember that.
When I go in, I hate them too. They're noxious. So, okay. So now we see this is a noxious smell. He cannot tolerate it. He cannot be forced to stay in there. So we have to figure out. And I think in the end, he ended up eating in the classroom a lot because it was really impossible for him in there.
Because it was unbearable for him.
I think that worked out.
Yeah. So basically what you're saying is beforehand, what was happening is everybody was, I don't know if everybody was doing what you're doing, but like you felt free at least to be able to like zone in on each child and what their experience was that was leading to the behaviors. So then when ABA came in, what was the change? Like what was the change that would have been trickling down, not just to the professionals, but to the students that you saw?
I think the change was mostly that, I hate to say this, but if I get rid of this boy's behaviors, this ABA therapist won't have a job. I mean, that sounds terrible,
but
that's the truth. If I get rid of those headbangs and I get rid of those trashing the cafeteria, and if I get rid of all those things that he's tracking, what is he left with? The kid is going to be functioning.
But I think, let me clarify my question. I think, what was the change in the way the school was run and the children were related to? Like, how were the children related to differently with the ABA?
Yeah, I think the data collection became the goal. So instead of looking like the superior detective work we were doing, looking underneath, looking, what's causing this?
Right.
Is it this? Is it that? Let's try this. Let's try that. It became, we collect this data, and this is our model. And if you do these other things, it's just kind of like
a distraction from the data. A distraction from the data. So then the focus became the data, and then then how did that impact how the staff was interacting with the students? And then the next question is, and how did the students react to that? But now the question is, if the focus is the data, how does that impact how the teachers and therapists are interacting with the students?
So then you're really working with the child through this like you're going to study him. You're going to put him in a little box, and you are going to study him, and you're going to track him. That means you're not going to interact with him, really. You're not going to really try to communicate with him and see what's inside. You're not interested in that, because, and the demands for the data were very intense for these teachers. There were lots of tracking sheets, and there was a lot of pressure for them. So how can you track objectively while you're trying to like do something on these other levels with this child? You can't do it. So it's almost like it becomes a laboratory. This is a laboratory of behavior, and we are studying him. And that is,
so when, I'm sorry. Once these behaviors were, I mean, this was meant to guide you in some way. So once these behaviors were collected, it's like this leads to a therefore. So like, we've got the data, and therefore, what are we going to now do in reaction to these behaviors? Like, what was done about the behaviors?
Not that much. They just want to keep tracking, you know, like, oh, he picks his nose a lot, or he coughs. Well, we can track that. We can track the data. And I remember blowing up at a team meeting saying, we're not interested in this. Why are the parents so interested in how many times he picks his nose? Why is he doing this 100 times a day? Why? What? This is not functional.
So the data wasn't leading to any kind of...
it didn't lead to anything functional. It was just more data. So we'll collect data on the new behavior. But
my understanding of ABA is that, I mean, it might be that this is a specific, my understanding of ABA is we have the data, and then based on the data, we create something to do something about the behavior.
Right.
And that wasn't happening.
It was never anything towards function. It was never geared towards function. It was geared towards making.
But just to clarify, but something must have been done in reaction to the data. Like, we have this data, and now therefore we're going to do what? We're going to like reward. So my understanding of ABA is that we're going to therefore reward not doing it. We're going to punish yes doing it.
Yes. Well, the different approaches were the ignoring. We're going to ignore it, which most of the time is not helpful at all, because
it's very hard to ignore it and track it at the same time.
Exactly. We're ignoring it, and then we're going to see that he's banging his head 100 times more. Okay. So we're going to ignore it, or we're going to offer like the incentives, but it was hard with these kids also because they don't think abstractly. So it's like, if you don't bang your head, you will get a prize. You will get a gummy bear. But like, he doesn't even understand if he doesn't bang his head.
Yeah, right? It's a complex train of thought. Yeah.
Right. And I never used any incentives in any of my groups, and I was very against it. I said they don't need gummy bears. They don't need nothing, because their intrinsic happiness and satisfaction, it was evident to everybody. Everybody.
And that is a motivator. It's a non-concrete motivator, but it is a more powerful motivator.
Right. I'll show you. We sewed pillows.
It's beautiful.
And these are kids that were really, a lot of them were violent, and they were dysregulated, and they couldn't communicate. But they sat there and they sewed.
With needles.
With real needles, not plastic.
So what you're saying is
satisfaction.
So the satisfaction of accomplishing something, you're saying, was the motivator. Gummy bear free.
Yes, we did puppet shows with Marionette, and we made up our own script.
I want to hear about the puppet shows. Can you tell me more about the puppet shows?
Oh, well, so they made
their narrative, so I really get excited about that.
So they made their marionettes, and then we had to do a simple script. It was very hard for them, but they did it. It was like very simple. Hello, wow, I am swinging.
Okay.
Do you want to swing? Something very, very simple stuff. Very simple, but I'm going up. My legs are up. My legs are down. My head is down. And these kids, they love this. They love it.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, what was their reaction to it?
Oh.
What was, two separate questions. What was their reaction when they themselves were doing it? And what was their reaction to each other and their presentation?
Yeah, it was very exciting. It was very, very
So
exciting
great.
for them. We had talent shows.
So
They
cute.
sang with the karaoke. I did a lot of karaoke. They performed on a
Awesome.
stage. We did a lot of that, and they loved it. And the staff went crazy over it. They were like, it was like real clapping and enjoying, and it was
They
so
could be proud
different.
of themselves.
It was
Yeah.
beautiful. It was a beautiful program. It was absolutely beautiful.
So then if going back to like the progression, and I love this that you're sharing, this is really cool. I might steal some of these ideas with my clients. I love the hands-on stuff, and
Oh yeah.
I love the something to point to. There's a song in the musical Working, something to point to, that
Oh yeah.
a lot of
Oh, yeah.
times when we're working, especially with kids on the spectrum, we're looking for something for us to point to, their change in behavior, but we're not enabling them to create for themselves something to point to, which you're saying is the intrinsic motivation, which is really much more functional for them.
Exactly.
Right? So, and it sounds like this is more like the before and after. During the time that it was mostly under ABA, I don't know if it's continued that way since then, but while you were there, what did you see as the shift in what was happening with this one student, but also with the students generally, and what was happening with them? What did you
I
notice?
think the shift was really that laboratory model where there wasn't as much laughter. You know, you're losing that spontaneity. You're losing all of that like fun stuff that the staff loved, and the kids, and the joking around, and
So the
that.
feeling of the environment shifted.
All the feeling, the real stuff of what makes people happy. Like you're losing that. You lose that.
So interestingly, I actually have like a question. The behaviors themselves, how did they change from before and after? Did you notice a shift that the behaviors decreased or increased? Do you recall a shift in either direction with that?
I think what ends up happening is that there just ends up to be this move towards compliance. Like you have to figure out a way to get that kid to comply. And if it's, putting him in the, quiet room, or doing something to just make him comply,
I'm curious, actually, what is the quiet room? What was that?
There was a quiet room, but then they changed it. It was a quiet room, and then they changed it to like a little bit more of a sensory room. It had a rocking chair. There were some nice things there. There was a fish room, fish tank.
I want a fish.
So there were things, but I'd say you would never ever get to that deep level in that child, ever. You would never reach it with that model.
Yeah, but I just want to hear more about.
I think I wasn't
not just I guess more like things that you could that a parent might have seen a difference in, like, and not just the feeling, which is something that is important, but what might have looked different to an outside observer who might have come wandering through beforehand, like a non-professional who might have come wandering through the school beforehand and then during the ABA.
It's possible you would just see a more regimented, less like spontaneity, less laughter, more stress on the staff.
So that
kind of like a little militant more feeling about it.
Yeah, and of course, like I've seen this in all sorts of educational environments, when the staff is feeling stressed and pressured, it really does impact their interactions with the kids.
A lot.
Even well-intentioned people who are under pressure, like, it's going to change how you interact.
That's right. It was enormous pressure for the staff.
Yeah. Okay, and so then you have. Are you still with this family, or?
Well, because of the virus, we stopped for a while.
So basically, just until very recently.
Yeah, I'm hoping to go back.
Yeah. So with but in those six years, right, since you left that school, you continued to work with this boy and his family, this young man now, and this family. So I'd love to hear more about what you have done well, yeah, what you've done with him since then, and the shift that you've seen in him. You spoke a little bit about it, but like how, I guess, his engagement with the world, like how
Oh,
he is. Yeah, that's what I'd like to hear about.
oh, wow.
So
So,
so you knew him before as a student, you knew him during,
yeah,
and since you left the school, I guess he's now out of the school as well.
exactly. So he's been
Yeah.
in a group home and also like a day program for
Okay.
autism. And well, basically, like, I mean, his parents have been amazing. His parents have been very involved from the very beginning. Many times they didn't know what to do with him. He was violent and there were a lot of problems. It was
All right.
very, very hard for them. But they were super involved with the school. Like, I saw what they were doing. So when they saw what he was doing with me, then I said, look, maybe I'm going to print up some cards and you'll take a look at them because his pictures are so cute. Let's see what
They're
they look
beautiful,
like on the
yeah.
cards.
Yeah.
And they liked that. And it took a while. And then the father decided to make a website and they made a little video about him. And now
Supportive
his,
of him, it sounds like.
huh?
They're so supportive of him, it sounds like.
Very supportive.
Beautiful.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then his real day job is to work on his greeting card business. He goes to an office, and there's a video of it on his website. They show him at his
We need
desk.
to ask them permission if we could share. That'd be
Okay,
amazing.
yeah, I'm sure they'd be happy if you did.
Yeah, I mean, if to promote, but you
To
know.
promote, yeah, they would love it. And he's at his desk, and he has to collate he gets orders. So he has to organize, you can see envelopes, and there's string he has to tie the things, and there's a list and an inventory, and this is his business. And he is so happy. I have one picture of him, he's just that with his paintbrush, he's like the happiest boy. Like,
Talk about something to point to.
yes.
There are a lot of folks not on the spectrum that struggle to start businesses.
Exactly.
That's beautiful.
Exactly. It's
That's
amazing.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And is he able to make an income to support himself, or at least something for himself, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I would
His
love it if they
sense
would
of
allow us
self
to
is
share,
like,
because maybe we can make this to something that he could support himself with. That'd be amazing.
I know, it's
That'd be
amazing.
incredible. Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah, his parents always thank me. They're like, you saw this in him, and
amazing.
because of that, and I'll tell you, it started from a tile. We were painting on a very small ceramic tile.
Yeah.
And I was trying to see. I was showing them like it was like a picture of something like a forest. I wanted to see what were they seeing, what could they paint onto the tile that they saw, and I saw these little strokes. They were tiny little strokes, and it was from this tiny tile that I said, you know something? He's got something.
Right.
I see it.
And
he did.
And it's about like, and you have to be looking past compliance versus non-compliance to
Exactly.
looking for them, like who they are.
That's
and like
exactly
these little
right.
sparks of like, because everybody has genius, and being able to find sort of like what are the flares that they're sending out from in there that they want us to see them. They
Right.
want to be seen by
Well,
him.
that's
They
like
do.
this
They want to be
article I wrote. This one up.
Amy, I'm looking at your door.
It just moved. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Go
I
ahead.
wrote this article about my work with him. When potential whispers, we need to whisper back. And this is all
I love that.
about my
It's a
work
gorgeous
with him.
title.
Yeah.
I'd
And
love to
that's
be able
about
to-
my work with him, because that's what it was. The potential is whispering.
Right.
Are we there to whisper back, or are we with the clipboard taking data? Like, what are we doing?
Right, because really ultimately, I've often said, if that was done to me, I hope I would become violent, because we're humans, and we're each here because our will and our potential is meant to be here and expressed in this world.
That's right.
And it's not about compliance to somebody else's will and somebody
Exactly
else's
right. Very well put.
intentions for us. And also, I guess, I will share that, there was a time that I interviewed at a number of different schools for autism locally. And I did see a pattern. And I shared this with you, Amy, that I saw a pattern between the schools, that the more behavioral the approach, the more they were telling me, well, you have to understand, we're a school for autism. And so you're going to see restraints, and you're going to see people put in isolation.
There's more of that.
And and these children are violent, I would hear more often.
Yes.
And as opposed to when there was a more developmental or relational kind of an
Exactly.
approach, where I was hearing what the kids' personalities were,
Exactly.
and not
Exactly.
like we have to keep them under control,
That's right.
because we, and I include people, they are part of us. They are us too. Autism is us in so many ways. That's a whole other
That's right.
discussion. Like
That's right.
that like they're reflecting back to us more strongly than we see for ourselves the unhealthy aspects of the world that we've created, that we need to make better for them and for us. It's about bridging the gap as opposed to putting them in their place.
Totally right.
Right. So I really appreciate, I think it's important, and we talked for a while leading up to this discussion, that I'm nervous to bring these things out, because ABA is such a strong voice, but also, like, in response to the flares that we see from, these kids, but also from the parents, it's like, is there another way? Is there another approach?
Exactly.
And
Exactly. For the parents, yeah.
yeah, and for the the adults on the spectrum and the children that with these parents, for themselves to hear that there are many other ways, that you have the Miller method that we're going to share in a later interview, and I'm bringing out RDI, and these are two of many other approaches. I want to circle back. I always at the beginning of the interview, but you were very excited, and I didn't want to quash your enthusiasm to share your story. What is your definition of autism?
Oh.
Because I think a person, the way somebody sees something tells you a lot about, or helps us to understand a lot about how they interact with it.
Right. I mean, I really don't even see it as a disorder. I see it as maybe like a syndrome, or it's some type of syndrome, maybe, where people have unusual perceptions, difficulty communicating their perceptions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different experience of the environment.
Yeah.
It's interesting, like, we're in a shared environment, but we're not all like, I don't know if any of us are experiencing it the same way as each other. I hear about neurodiversity, and people just describe themselves as, I am neurodiverse and this person is neurotypical, but I think that even that is limiting the definition of neurodiversity. I think neurodiversity is a recognition that we are each experiencing, like, we're sitting in the room, now we're not sitting in the room together because of COVID, but like, we might be sitting in the same physical environment, but we're not having the same experience.
No, it's so true.
Yeah.
And I have an example of a young woman I'm working with now. She's 23. And are we out of time?
No. No.
And she is her story is very, very interesting. But it turns out that in some ways she's sort of like a 5-year-old, like she loves Elmo and Sesame Street.
Right.
On the other end, when she was 14, she was trained to be a Reiki energy healer.
I'm sure she's
this girl,
yeah,
and she has done it on me. She's amazing.
Did you feel the shift?
Yes. Oh my God, I'm taking her to people now so they can see what she does. But so she has other gifts which are also like way, way out of this world. So it's just such an interesting package, but it's so sad for her. She'll say, I don't fit anywhere. I'm so lonely. I don't have any friends. It's so lonely and devastating. And the truth is, the amount of adult suicide in autism is huge. It's huge. They don't have anybody who understands. And there's a lot of, bigger problems with agencies, like the rehab agencies will, they'll set them up in training programs, and then they send them out to a job. But the job coaching lasts for 6 months, and they are on their own. And her friend, he committed suicide. He was one of these people, a beautiful boy.
This is like a boyfriend of hers, or just a male friend?
Yeah, it was like a very, very close friend. And he had a job. He could not sustain the job. There was no coaching. He fell through the crack. There was nothing. And his parents weren't supportive. The parents many times burn out. The
They're
behaviors,
exhausted.
and
Yeah.
over the years they get so tired, and the kids become adults, and they're like, oh, you're on your own, you're an adult, but they're not adults. They're really kids. So this was so
But they're
heartbreaking.
both, but they're also biologically adults. They also,
Yes, and
they
it's
might
so
have had an attraction to,
confusing for people. Like, they're adults, but yet he still played with his trucks, just like she likes Elmo. But this was a boy who was, it was just heartbreaking. And from her, I really saw how the cracks, falling through these cracks of bureaucracies, they don't get the services, and then these beautiful potentials are just lost. And that's been a very heartbreaking thing for me this year. I've been going through that with her. So I'm seeing it at many, many ends, through the school, after school, into the vocational world. And
Right. Well, I think, I had an interesting thought this morning. I'm always trying to think of analogies to solidify my understanding of different aspects of everything that was happening with autism. And I think that a lot of times people relate to autism as being not human or less than human or differently human. And I remember, I don't love this title. I was interested in, and I grew up in theater. You had a background in art. I had a background in theater before I came to speech therapy, which I'm transitioning out of now. And just the title, Children of a Lesser God, which is not something that I believe in, but like the title, but like as if they're less than because they can't hear.
That's right.
But if that, then how much more so that that how people are related to that they're sensing everything differently and relating to the world in every way differently. That we do come here from somewhere else. And I remember when my children were born, kind of feeling like at 3 months, or like maybe around 6 weeks, 3 months, somewhere in there, like they had fully landed, and then what's happening at 6 months and then beyond, in child development, is the shift into the parent orienting the child. I also was thinking of the Will Smith, what was it, Independence Day or Men in Black or something, like Welcome to Earth. That's our job. We receive our children and we're welcome to Earth. But in neurotypical development, they're sending us signals like, this is what I'm getting of what I'm seeing.
Right.
And then we're like, okay, well, yes, and, or no, but, and then we kind of help them to frame what our understanding of the world to prepare them for adulthood. But what's happening in autism is, because of how they're sensing it, it's so overwhelming that they're not sending out those signals to us in a way that we understand.
Exactly.
And then the way that they relate seems less human to a lot of people.
It does. And even inside families, the families themselves with the siblings, I can't even tell you what kind of torture goes on there with the siblings to autistic siblings.
I think it's very disorienting for the siblings. The siblings don't understand. It's hard for the parents to understand.
They don't like them. They'd like to be rid of them. They'd really like to be rid of them, a lot of them.
It's difficult for the person on the spectrum, and it does make things difficult for the other members of the family. It's hard.
Very hard. Very, very hard. It's very hard for the parents and the attention and all the things that go into it. So yes.
Right. It's very hard for everybody. It's a challenge, this mismatch. But really, it's like you're saying, it's not necessarily a brokenness. It's a mismatch with the environment, but we still can help to bridge that gap in many ways. And the arts are great, like you're saying, music and visual art, and I would love to do something with theater eventually.
That's right. It's kind of like the whispering, autism whispering. You're looking to see, who is this, what's inside, what am I gonna,
and then be welcoming when we hear it. Be welcoming when we hear the whispering, to be open to hearing it and to be welcoming. So I always love talking to you. It's amazing. So, but I always like to end with some takeaways. What, if you want to do it together separately, maybe first professionals, then parents, because I like to end on what's most important, because the parents, and maybe even adults themselves on the spectrum, because you have some clients on the spectrum. I'm going to give you a third category because I think that you could really speak to that. Some takeaways. When interacting with autism, either somebody else's or your own, some advice that you'd like to give, and then also when seeking help for bridging this gap, some advice that you'd like to give. I just gave you 6 different things to talk about.
Okay.
Or generally some takeaways that you would like people to get from your experience.
I think, to try to be attuned that that with autism comes, there's a lot of hidden things in autism. What you're seeing a lot of times are manifestations of need to communicate, or even the hand flapping is
Right.
A lot of times it's a visual issue.
Yeah.
They're trying to get their depth perception. So whatever you're seeing, many times what you're seeing is just like it's a part of things, but that does not define who they are.
Right.
There's lots of layers in these individuals, and gifts, and sometimes the gifts will like blow your mind.
Right.
It will blow your mind. So that's one thing, to be kind of humbled instead of looking at this person. Oh, look at that, whatever.
Yeah.
It's humbling. It's very humbling. And to kind of have some empathy. This could be a very lonely life.
That's hard. It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be.
But it often is.
To realize
that
whatever you can do, like whatever kindness you can do, or whatever, like even if there's somebody bagging my groceries, I always say, I love the way you put that in so well. Every time I come, I love saying hello to you, and I love the way you bag my groceries. I'm going to pick you every time.
Beautiful. No, because there's so much about you're not fitting my expectation of what a person should be. Right. And it's very hard. We've all experienced that to a degree, but to get it constantly your whole life is very grating on somebody who's finding the world very grating to begin with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's a really big thing. And I think for parents to really keep their minds open, that there's approaches, and then there's approaches that are like out there and well known. There's lesser known approaches which are equally as valid. It might take some research and digging, but if you see something that sparks your interest, dig, look into it. Like, we'll talk about Miller method more. How did I discover it? I was reading an article, and it struck me as so powerful. I wrote a letter to Dr. Miller. I said, I want to study your method. And it was a tiny little article I read. Right. So it's like, it spoke to me. So to be attuned, what speaks to you? Would this help your child? Go for it.
Trusting yourself, because a lot of what kind of is challenged from the beginning, but then gets kind of quashed by like the system and everything.
The systems can squash. Yes.
Is the parent's own intuition and connecting with these flares that the child is sending out. And so my experience was I was going off book. I'm like, my training is not preparing me for this. I'm going to do other things that make more sense to me. And I was doing these things, and an ABA therapist saw what I was doing and said, you're doing RDI. And I'm like, what's that? And then I reached out and called Dr. Sheely, who's trained me in RDI. Yeah.
Yeah.
So definitely I actually wrote down, I think, like 3 or 4 different times other things that I want to interview you about in the future.
Great. I'm so happy. I'm so happy. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Amy.
My pleasure.
It's a pleasure to speak with you.
My pleasure.
Take care. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please click like and share with anybody you think can benefit from it. For more videos like this, please subscribe. To request a video on a topic that we haven't covered yet, go ahead and leave a comment down below, and I'll see that. And if I get enough interest, I'll make a new video. Also, you don't have to do this alone. You could join the discussion in our private Facebook group, and the link is in the comment box down below. Or if you're interested in working with me personally, send me a PM on Facebook and we'll make a time to talk. In the meantime, use your powers and take care.